The first item up is going to be visitors and public comment. Are there any members of the public here to speak? Hearing none, the next item up is Strategic Ed Committee. Just as we, go ahead.
I'm sorry, are we,
Yeah, we need to do executive session. There's a couple of executive session things to talk
can we
about.
get board members to serve as committee liaisons, we're not doing that?
Right, that's the first thing you put on the agenda
You got
to
a
do coming
recommendation?
out.
Right, now, Mr. Chair, can we pull that item and move it to the January 28th board meeting?
Okay, we've got a motion to pull that item for the next meeting. Is there a second?
Does that require a board vote?
It does.
If you pull it, yes. Yes, I pull it,
It
yes.
requires a committee of the, to change, to vote, to put it
To
on
pull
the-
it.
So Kate,
Pull it.
You can take no action now and do it in a special meeting.
So we do need a motion and
So you got a
and vote
motion?
to pull.
and a second. Any further discussion?
And
Alright.
are you gonna pop that up on our screen, Julie?
Who made the motion?
Reverend
Reverend
Mack.
Mack.
And I seconded it. Kate seconded it.
All right, we're waiting to vote. There we go.
I'm not in yet, this is.
All right.
We need to get you in, Chris,
Yeah,
because it's
so I vote yes.
kind of,
Okay,
kind
so we got
of.
a yes vote from Reverend Collins while he gets it.
And can you put that in the system for him so that it, I'm sorry? Can you put his vote in the system for him?
The next item up we've got is the Strategic Ed Committee. Just to the presenters today and to board members, I'm going to try to do my best to follow our policy, which is any item coming up, board, we've got 2 minutes per person and up to 10 minutes to discuss an item, and that's straight out of our policy. We can vote to extend that by an additional 10 minutes for a max of 20 minutes per topic, but this is a policy we have not followed once so far, so this is an attempt today. So it's going to look new, but it is and has been our policy. And to presenters, we don't want to interrupt you, but we would ask if you would stick to wave tops. We've all had the information since Friday, and we thank you for getting that to us. But if you could stick to wave tops so we save more time, less time on PowerPoint, and more time for questions from board members. And if we could, I will turn Strategic Ed over to Ms. Jeffrey, and board members, if it's your committee and we're going through, I'm going to try to keep us on our time schedule. So I don't want to be rude, but I will politely interrupt and say, look, we're hitting our time frame, and if we can please move on. Ms. Jeffrey.
Magnet choice options, you have 15 minutes, or we have 15 minutes.
I'm going to get us started, and I've asked the team that's doing a lot of this lift to come up to the table to jump in there or answer any questions. Immediately after the December meeting, the team in Learning Services took those recommendations and they started breaking them apart and digging deeply into them. And what they realized is that we are going to have a very tight window when that application process opens. Our goal is on January 28th to bring you back exactly how we've taken those recommendations, looked at what's feasible, broken it out for what we can accomplish the first year, make some tweaks. We think there's a couple things that might need a few little tweaks. How can we parse that out for year 1, year 2, and there could even be some year 3. But they've been meeting in every available moment that they've had to come together and break that apart. The policy actually reads that the window has to be publicized 1 month prior to the opening of that application window. We are asking for 2 weeks. If we bring it to you on January 28th, we want to be ready to go by mid-February, and all while we'll be advertising and publicizing those admission criteria. So that's our request. And I'd ask the team that's actually doing a lot of this lift, if they have anything they want to add.
So, in the past, based on the policy, we would have 30 days that we would notify everybody that it was magnet school applications, and then there were 30 days that the applications were open.
Correct.
Okay. And what you're saying to us is you're going to come back at our January 28th meeting with some recommendations related to these items right
Yes.
here, potentially changing some some of these things related to magnet school admissions. And then if we take action on those, we'd have a 2-week or so window to tell people
Yes.
that potentially the magnet school admissions would begin in the middle of February. I'm making
That is
generalized.
correct, and the rationale, I should have shared the rationale. The rationale is if we wait to the end of February to open that window, we're bumping up against the personnel allocations, budgets, we're getting into the transfer window, so we need that window to open in mid-February.
Cindy, or were you? Joyce.
Joyce is first.
Okay, Cindy, Joyce.
Okay, so then, what I've heard is two things. What I am reading says you want us to approve on January 28th, limiting the window, which is perfectly acceptable because we need to get the application process started. What I'm hearing for the first time, after it being published almost incorrectly on the website, now being changed, is that you plan to bring us more proposals to implement possibly in the 18-19 school year on January 28th for us to immediately decide to approve or not approve and you immediately to implement. Why do we go through this in December then?
Once we got those recommendations, we started digging into what that means, and it was a checks and balances system. So what the committee did, Ms. Nichols could not be with us tonight, she chaired that committee. I think Don Kennedy was involved in that committee. They pulled a group of stakeholders, both internal and external stakeholders.
Right, we went
parents,
through that in
community.
December.
Right. As soon as we got those, intentionally Learning Services was not a part of that because we're the implementers and we wanted fresh eyes and fresh perspectives. So once those were handed over to us, that's when we started doing a deep dive, and we picked them up the very next day and started digging in there, and they have worked on top of all their other work, budget and personnel and some of the other things. They've carved out time and put a lot of time and effort into this.
So I have, I won't say anything else, my vote will reflect this, but you're talking about, and we're talking about making major changes to how we publicly educate children in Charleston County to rectify some achievement issues that have been persistent for generation, and you want us to make changes that will be persistent for generations to come. And I'm very uncomfortable with you telling us that we get to find out sometime before the 28th what you want to do and then ask us. I know you guys have been working hard, I get that, but parents have been working hard raising their children and going to their full-time jobs. I was very, very content, and as recently as today have been on the phone with state legislators standing up for the fact that we took this into the public arena in December. For better or worse, we did that. I'm very concerned that we're going to have a different perspective going forward.
Thank you. I think there's a misinterpretation here. I don't believe that the staff is doing anything except working on these 10 recommendations
Right.
that you approved in December.
That's correct.
I'll give you an example of one that might not make sense. Here's an example. One was consider lowering the entrance criteria for schools that test to 65 to the 65th percentile. That's one that they might come back and say, we looked at that, we don't think it's going to accomplish your objective.
Or they might come back and say, we want you to approve this tonight, and we're going to start it in 14 days.
Yeah, but there will be absolutely nothing that has not already been put in front of the public. There will be nothing that the only thing that I think that Cindy meant to say was there could be pieces of this that we're not able to do next year.
Correct.
If you take the school that has the longest waiting list in the county, increase by 10% the eligibility.
You better be prepared to increase how you bring them into the school, because you're just creating more anxiety among students who are being told they can succeed. There's just no space for them.
Right, so you've got to come back, you have to say, that's not probably something we can implement this year because you've got to expand capacity, and you've got to think about building an IB program right up through the high school, and you've got to look at whether that really accomplishes your objective. You might want to get a good attorney involved and find out whether assigning students by zip code makes a heck of a whole lot more sense.
I completely
So
agree.
that's
I just
the
know that
type-
we left that meeting in December thinking those conversations had been had, and these were the things we were going to do, and these were the things we were going to do immediately, and these were the things we were going to consider.
All right.
Today I'm hearing those were the things we were going to consider, and we still may do them, and if I didn't know that, I'd be hard pressed to know how the
I
board.
didn't leave that.
If it said that you were going to do it, you're going to do it. If it said consider it, it'll be considered. That's all the staff is saying. There will be nothing that comes to you on the 28th that you did not approve on the 17th. And that has not been before the public.
So we need to be prepared to tell our public that any one of these things could be in place for next school year. We need to know what their thoughts are on that.
That we had that conversation, right, we did that in December, and what Cindy and staff were saying are, these are the things that are being told to us by numerous different people, from Clemson to Advanced Ed. These are the areas the staff, they are recommending that we really look at. We agreed to that, then this group has worked on it more, and we'll get in the Wednesday before January 28th, the specific recommendations, which will be probably narrowed down, and we'll have some that you'll say put off, and some that you'll say make that 70%, and we'll have that to vote on January 28th.
That's great, but that didn't answer my question. My question is, I wasn't aware that I needed to tell our constituents that the consider was going to be considered for 60 days. I thought it was going to be considered for a longer period of time between December and January 28th. Are you saying that I need to make sure everyone's prepared? This could well happen in the 2019 year. I could have been wrong in December. That's my question. Is it possible that these things would be implemented in 1920?
What we plan to bring you is a 3-year plan. I don't see us doing all of those things, or we are just looking at the things that were recommended, but we're going to bring you a 3-year plan. We know that's not feasible to roll everything that's on there, and that's why it was written and worded with consider and review and examine.
One thing, if I can just interject, in the interest of democracy of time, we've got 9 members on the board. If we've spent 9 minutes so far, if we could make sure
But I want to be
everybody's
very
going
clear,
around.
we are making massive changes to one of the most controversial aspects of education in our county. I'm sorry if 9 minutes puts us up against a wall.
Yeah, we can't
No, I'm
get
just saying
started.
9 minutes
That's
about
our
one
job.
board member's questions.
That is our job.
Yep.
Ms. Green.
The question I have, I guess, relates to the whole time issue. Just from a standpoint of, I mean, are we being unreasonable with the timelines that we've given you to work this? I mean, I know that this is very important to everybody. It's such a major issue that personally, I don't want to see us compromise quality for time purposes. And I mean, so my original question to you was, what's the likelihood that y'all might not be able to get us what you say you'll get us in the next meeting? And then the bigger issue that I had after I looked through this yesterday was, are we being reasonable about just the whole timeline period?
So I'm going to try to start answering that, and I'll ask this team if they have anything to add, or Dr. Postaway, or if really any other board member. It's my understanding that it's been a priority to
Absolutely.
revamp this for multiple years.
Absolutely.
And at some point in time, we have to just break open the can, or open the can and get started on the work that's inside the can. And that's what this team's trying to do. They are cognizant that it is going to be a massive, big change. And so the conversations they've had so far have broken it up into what they can get accomplished the first year, what they can get accomplished the second year, and maybe even the third year. One of the first aspects of this entire process across the board has to do with what kind of supports do we provide out of the central office for our schools. That work has been primarily left to the schools. So what kind of guidance and support, and who provides that guidance and support, and who sits down and looks at policy and sits shoulder to shoulder with those school teams and makes sure that we're following our policy as written, or we bring the policy back in here for you to revise. So the very first part is that part. The second part is getting at some of the other fine details that are in that document and figuring out if they get at what we're trying to accomplish, which is greater access for our students. So if I didn't answer that correctly, or if anybody wants to jump in there, I invite you to do so.
I just would like to say, this has been a problem for a long time. And to change systems, you have to actually change systems. And this is a change, I respect everyone here, and the superintendent, and whoever else has worked on it, the public's been on it. This is the change they're recommending, and we need to get a backbone and say, okay, we're gonna try this change. Because what we've been doing doesn't work for a lot of the kids in our system who've been left out of some of these schools. Reverend Collins, you're next.
Thank you, ma'am. I thank you guys for working on this, spending a lot of time on it. I worked on it years too, and I am still not satisfied with what I see. That's not to discredit anybody, but on the surface, when I look at this, I don't see where it's going to ensure us much more diversity. It is accomplishing one thing that I see, that is to try to avoid the appearance of bias, to use outside judges. That was, and teachers from other schools, like for example, for the writing sample at Academic Magnet, not to use the same teachers every year, the same people, but use other people. I mean, I do agree with that part. But I think the way the choice process is designed, it inherently discriminates against children of color by its very merits. I think the most we've seen in recent years, I don't know about last year or the year before, but I've seen like 2 African American kids get in, 3, 4, 5. I haven't seen very many kids get into Academic Magnet High School. I'm sure it might have been more last year, I assume, because most of it did some things with the choice, the top 2 choice schools. I don't know whether they produce much of the results or not. Sometimes even the top 2 choice produce non-minority kids. We simply add more of the same. So we're going to be diverse in what we're doing. We have to be radical and drastic changes. If it were up to me, this is how I would do it. We have a centralized testing place. You come sit down, you take a test, or you do it online. It's like in a private school setting. You take a test, give me the 1,000 names. We'll sit down, board members, superintendent, put them all in a hat. Everybody qualified, name get pulled out. Yeah, but be fair though. Everybody.
Only 2 people spoke.
Just be fair to me, but be fair to me also.
Yes, sir.
You pull every name out. Just pull it out. When we get to so many, when we reach capacity, that's it. Everybody went through the same process. There's no, whether you went to private school or not, will make a bit of difference. The test is geared that we select a certain amount of students. And we do put the private schoolers are at the biggest advantage. They always get in, they get at least 25% of our seats. I can imagine every year, at least 25% from outside schools. And we have to weigh that. Why don't our kids have at least a 1
30
point?
seconds left on this time period total.
And Reverend Mackens is here.
Just allow me please to finish up.
You're already 3 minutes in.
Yeah, but I didn't say a word when Ms. Costa was speaking. I waited back
I know,
quietly.
and I should have cut her off.
Well, so,
30 seconds.
I'm almost finished. Just give me a little more time. But you made me lose my train of thoughts. I have to start over now.
And we're trying to make sure everybody gets a chance to weigh
I
in.
know, but just hear me for a minute. You always want to save time on me.
Lottery.
No.
Don't always try to save time on me, please, Ms. Costa.
We've only had
Ms.
3
Ms.
people
Jeffrey, I
speak
mean.
during this whole time.
I know, but I'm
And
trying to move
follow
along.
policy.
Move along.
I'm trying to move along, but I need to be respected with time also, like everybody else. So what we create then is a system that the private schools will get 1/4 of our seats in the magnet schools, special academic magnet. That's guaranteed by the system we created.
Right.
And until we fix that by giving our kids a 1 point advantage for being in our schools for the past 3 years, past 2 years, that's not going to change. We have to change that by changing the point system, because they're going to beat us each time. We're not creating schools for private schoolers. We're creating schools for public kids that want to go to public school. This is what tax dollars are paying for. So we fix that. The other thing is we got to have diversity in judges. Must have diversity in judges. To me, that's critical.
Yeah.
Diversity in judges. It says nothing about that. It says choose other judges.
We're going on 5
But,
minutes. If I can please interrupt and get.
Yeah, so now I'll use the rest of my time to Reverend Mack.
Okay, two things, Mr. Chair. If we can, when this committee recedes, if we can ask Mr. John Regal to come sit with us, guys, see, we're gonna get to the point where we're gonna need some legal advice. So my thing is.
Can we introduce Mr. Regal since you're
Yes.
bringing him into our meeting?
Sure.
Mr. Regal is attorney out of Columbia, has been hired to be parliamentarian here, which is a recommendation coming from the accreditation committee to
You can come over here then, and sit right by me, so I can keep it straight, sit right here by me. Sit right here, not gonna use this gavel, and keep it in order. Now, listen, we're not gonna have our Reverend Collins speaking first of all, and
All right to
we're
that.
not gonna bother his attorney either. This be my attorney for the meeting.
So, just 30 seconds, I just want to add that I fully support the initiative. I honestly share some of Cindy's passion as far as this Magnus piece is concerned. We worked on it a couple of years ago as a committee, but fully support the initiative and what's trying to be accomplished here, particularly with the Clemson diversity piece. And I know we have to be aggressive moving forward, and that is very, very important as well. So this piece and this component, I feel, will help get us to where we need to be to do the work that we're trying to accomplish. So I just want to say thank you for the work, and as we move forward, that, you know, as we move forward, it's very, very important that we be as clear and precise, so that
Transparent.
as we move through this process, that we could fully understand, because we know we're being aggressive in this process, and I think that will help us tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any meeting minutes when you guys met with the public, any minutes? Or can we actually see what the public was saying? 'Cause that's really what I had.
Reverend Collins, if you'll email me, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna
thank you.
rudely interrupt everybody, and I'm a good interrupter.
So
Literacy
we-
strategic action.
We need a motion on this, right?
And I believe the only motion before us is to allow them to bypass the policy.
Right.
The discussion about what they're gonna change between now and January, or December and January, wasn't actually part of this discussion.
I moved the grant waiver of the
Second.
Oh, excuse me. When we're dealing with issues that deal with education, I had my hand up for a while and got overlooked. And we should not put a time limit on something like this until we hear from all board meetings. I'll pass right now, but that is downright rude.
It is rude
Okay,
and
I'm just
arrogant.
following our policy, which.
I don't give a rip about the policy when we got to take
If
people
we want
off
to
like
vote,
this. Is what I
extend
ask.
discussion by 10 minutes, we can do that.
But
No,
we
I'm
just-
fine now, but I just want to get that point across.
Okay, and I explained it before you came in here, that my intent is not to be rude, is to keep us on a schedule and moving forward.
But when you
It
deal,
starts with
I
all
can
us
see us,
getting here
I
on
can
time,
see us doing
12:30 when the
through
announcement
maintenance
time
or
is
something
12:30.
like that, but not on an issue like this.
Yep, yep.
When do you start?
Yeah,
Just
what,
start right now, please.
I mean, if we put if the staff and the agenda setters put time limit on it, does that bind the board?
We've got a policy of discuss, irrespective of the time limit, we've got a policy of each area being 10 minutes total, 2 minutes per person, and the intent there is so everybody can ask, can say their piece or give, but if all of us hold court for 9 minutes, then we'll be here through the night, and it decreases the effectiveness overall of our meeting.
Yeah, and your policy binds the board principally, but then also, you know, it's listed on the agenda when you're approving the agenda, you're agreeing essentially to the approved time limits as well.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, let me also add this. I just implore every board member to be considerate of policies that we have set, and that would be fair, respectful to the board, to the chair of each committee as we move forward. And if there are questions to be asked, then we do that according to the binding of the policy. Now, if that is not the case, then we need to change the policy. But if the chair of the committees are binding to the policies that are set, then we have to govern ourselves accordingly, okay? And we have to be respectful of one another. That is just important. I understand that education is important, and that's the business of the work that we're doing. So we just need to, one, do our homework prior to coming, and making sure that we ask questions that need to be asked, and those that need to be asked openly, you can do that. But talking over one another while another is talking, or over talking the next one, wasting time, that is downright disrespectful and rude. So we just need to respect one another as we move forward in this concept, because we're wasting time educating and training ourselves how to be board member and how to properly act in a board meeting. So I
Mr.
just
Chair,
ask-
Motion second.
I really just want to say, I thought I was coming here today to approve a policy waiver, and this is written that says these were the things approved at the December 17th board meeting. There is no indication that a board member should have come here today prepared that these things were going to change in 2 weeks.
I understand that. All I'm talking about is entirety as we move forward, that's how we have to govern ourselves. Now, in this particular case, questions were asked. I'm just saying be respectful to the chair of the committees as we move forward so that these questions can be asked and answer can be rendered back unto us. That's all I'm saying. So, but if there are questions about what is presented before us today, that's why we have staff here, we have the superintendent here, we are the board. And if we feel that something needs to be halted or stopped, then we do that as a board. But let's be respectful of the work that has been done in our discussion. Every board member is valuable, your opinion and your questions, but we can't get the work done if we're being rude or disrespectful to one another as we move forward. That's all I'm saying.
Mr.
We got a
Chairman,
motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, each meeting we have an issue with the 2-minute rule. And can we bring that back up in the committee, next board committee, to discuss
I
the
brought it
power,
up, the
the
board,
power
y'all voted
policy?
it down, changed
Can we
it.
get that back on the agenda?
Committee of the whole chair is Mr. Garrett. You can have that conversation.
Yes, sir. Let's get that back on the agenda, sir.
Yep, we're happy, I'm happy to discuss that.
All right.
Uh,
So you support discussion for that?
It's not for
We're, all
right now.
right, so we have a motion and a second.
We have a motion before us on the action item before us.
I've already voted.
Oh, no, we voted.
Yeah, I've
All
already
right, so we
voted.
good?
So wait, I mean, it'll pop back up it'll pop up once everybody's voted.
All right, we've got 10 minutes on the
Ms.
next.
Darby?
Eric?
I voted. I didn't show that.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jamie.
Thank y'all very much.
While people are voting, the next one is literacy, strategic actions, and next steps, 10 minutes.
And we have a special guest with us. We have one of our outstanding teachers, and I'm going to let Emily Woody introduce her.
So this is Leah Marie, and she is on staff at Cochran Elementary School. She was a nationally recognized teacher for her gains with student achievement, and now she is the instructional coach in that school in an effort to build more capacity for more teachers to impact then more students. So she's joining us today. She is a representative of our coaching structure at the school level, where we believe that this structure gets us to more of the job embedded, deep sort of changes and impact students that we are seeing this year. So we invited her to join us in case you have questions about that as we talk about literacy. So we gave you a lot of details in the board document. Today we just want to highlight some of those. And the slide that you see up here has got a couple of those on that. So first of all, the focus for us around anything in curriculum is to have a well-defined, aligned curriculum for all students. That's an equity issue, that they all should have access to that. So the green on that sideways diamond represents the core, what happens for all students in our system. And so our work now is to ensure that there's a strong core foundational literacy curriculum being implemented in our schools. So that's for all students to start off with.
And then as we move out from the green toward the red, we want to make sure that those students needing additional supports in either direction, that we're making sure those supports are aligned to that core. And of course, we want to also make sure that we're being intentional about meeting the specific needs of students with dyslexia.
Our particular focus for next year is around high school. So we recognize that students who have struggled in the past don't all of a sudden get to high school and everything's okay. And we don't have the supports in place right now that they need in the way that we would want. So we're advocating in our budget next year to have instructional coaches in each of the high schools. Someone like Leanne, but in our high schools, because we have them in elementary, we have them in middle, but we do not have them in high school currently. Also, as part of that work in high school is coursework that earns grad credit for students that's in an accelerated path, not catching in a remedial loop where students then will ever struggle to graduate. So that's the things we're exploring now. For instance, one of those examples is the state now allows Read 180, which is a curriculum, to count for English 1 credit. So instead of putting students in a remediation environment when they're not quite ready coming out of middle school, this is a way that they would still earn the grad credit, and it accelerates them into the pathway, so we get them to things like dual credit options as early as possible, instead of them always having to be doing catch up. So those are some of the things that we're looking at, we've been doing in literacy, and the next steps that we're looking at for next year.
So, just help me understand. So, did you say that there was an instructional coach, non-instructional coach for high school, or was it for the dyslexia piece?
No, we have
confused.
okay. So we have instructional coaches in all the elementary schools and all the middle schools, but we only have them in 3 high schools currently, and that was part of the targeted support work that we did last year. And so we want to round that out. We want instructional coaches in all of our high schools so that we build that job embedded capacity, not to come to a workshop every once in a while, but people like Leanne to be there to help with the work on a day-to-day basis.
Emily, if I could add, all of this work, they've been working on strengthening the core curriculum for all students. They've been working on interventions. You can see the work they did on dyslexia. You'll recall that we had dyslexia parents that came and spoke before the board. We really listened to what they had to say and designed strategies to get at the supports, because they were really right. They had some excellent suggestions. We've got training going on in Gullah Geechee, Read to Succeed. We've the instructional coaches, and I do want to give Miss Marie a chance to talk a little bit about her work with teachers and some of the big ahas she's had this year. We are just delighted to see her in this role. And if could you share just a bit? And maybe about, I heard you talking about your outstanding gains that you've seen.
Okay. I started off, I've been at the same school since 2012. So I've taught at Cochran. I left in 2015. I had a premature son, and then I came back and I taught for 2 years, and then now I'm the coach at the same school. So a lot of the teachers that are there I already have relationships with. So as far as like coming in as a coach, I feel like my job has been somewhat easy as far as transitioning, because most of the teachers know me there. So I taught the Bridges curriculum last year, for example. So this year I'm going in, I'm modeling lessons, I'm helping the teachers with the lessons. We have a lot of new teachers at our school who are not familiar with the curriculum, so I've been able to fill the gaps pretty quickly. So now we're map testing now, and so a lot of the teachers are having those aha moments from me being like the proctor or being in the classroom with them, and they're actually seeing the gains that their students are making.
So I do have one more question before Cindy gets in. Question. No, I know she was next. Yeah. So, is there a plan for some type of reading intervention for kids coming out of middle school into high school? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because when some kids leave high school and go into college or even go to Trident Tech, majority of the students end up in some type of reading prevention type course because they're not able to transition. And I guess my question is there any type of simulation there for us from kids coming from middle to high? Is that in the game plan?
Some of the work Miss Allison and her team are doing, they're progress monitoring. They're taking a look at the data throughout the year and determining how many students are reading on level and how many need support. And then they're out working with the schools. And Lisa, would you like to say anything about that?
Well, I think you're right. It's a critical time, those incoming freshmen. So looking at those needs. And so as we started engaging stakeholders and talking about intervention or pull-out versus really looking at our course offerings and seeing how we can keep kids on that pathway to earning their credits and potential for accelerating into dual credit options as quickly as possible. So it moves outside of purely intervention into really looking at core, having a flexible way to meet the needs of all students, and so that they don't get stuck, so that we can move a different way on the pathway after we've progress monitored and assessed where students are. And that has to continue not just from our incoming freshmen, although that's where the bulk of our study needs to be on their data, but then as they move forward each year to see then what do we need to do to meet the needs of the students.
And that Read 180 is designed to do exactly what you said. It and our adaptive digital content that we talked with you about last year, that hits individual needs while you remain in core instruction. So that again, you're not pulling out and missing core instruction, you're getting the approach for both of those at the same time.
So, first off, I would like a commitment that she doesn't ever leave North Charleston. I think people don't realize sometimes how many amazing North Charleston educators we have. I really don't. So on this, I'm not sure if I understood. Are you planning to expand the phonics expansion to K1 at 18 elementary schools next school year?
Yes.
Beyond the ones
It
you
is
have
in the
now?
budget. It is in our budget documents. We are developing the budget around that.
Okay, so you're not planning to do that, but you're planning to ask us to budget that, and it may or may not happen depending on that. Likewise, is that Read 180 going to be a budget offering that you're going to ask us to do? And because we need to start keeping track, because you just gave us 10 other things that are budget items for 1920. Do we need to consider that instructional coaches for high schools will be coming to us as a budget item for 1920?
We've got it in our initial planning documents. If it makes it through the internal district work, yes.
Reverend Collins?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Of all the kids in Charleston County with learning disabilities, what percentage of those kids would you say are dyslexic?
Could you say that?
What percentage of the kids in Charleston County that have learning disabilities or dyslexic?
That is a good question. I do not have those numbers, but I do know that dyslexia makes up the largest percentage of students with learning disabilities, but we can get those numbers to you.
Well, how many kids do we have in Charleston County that have learning disabilities?
We don't have that data.
I'm looking at that really.
That's the 10 minutes we're supposed to be done with this topic.
So you said you don't know how many kids have learning disabilities?
I know exactly where to go get it off of our database, but it is not in my head like a computer tonight.
Well, all right,
On
so
Saturday.
what do we do to, how do we discern that a child has dyslexia or a child just have problems at home? How do we discern the difference?
Yeah.
Miss Allison answer that.
That's an excellent question, and there's no one way. So we engage in team processes, and we engage in multiple different data sources. So review of historical data, interviews with teachers and parents, review of classwork, observations in classrooms, and then assessment data. So our universal screening data, more diagnostic assessment data, and sometimes if the team suspects that there is a learning disability, we move forward into that full psychoeducational evaluation. And then if that is up to a multidisciplinary team to make an eligibility decision about whether or not the student does indeed meet the criteria for a learning disability and needs specialized instruction or needs some other types of supports.
And what I was reading a few minutes ago, it said that children with learning disabilities, it said 80 to 90% of them are dyslexia. It's 80 to 90%.
Okay, that sounds about right to me. I do know it's the largest proportion, but.
Yeah, and then it said 20% of all people are dyslexic, 20%. So now they actually, then I move out the chairman's way so he can breathe at ease.
Well, I have you an answer on your number of students.
Okay.
That's how good this team is.
Yeah.
They went and got it, and they sent it to me on my watch. 1,802 students identified with having learning disabilities.
We got to commend that team.
They are commendable.
So now, does a doctor declare a child dyslexic, or does the school district do that?
We have a process for identifying students with learning disability in reading and dyslexia through the school system. And so we use all available information, and sometimes a private physician or psychologist has made a diagnosis already, and that school team reviews that information. But according to IDEA law, we follow the federal law and our state law and criteria. It's a team-based decision and a team-based determination as to the type of services that a student would receive.
And just point of order, we're at our
Okay.
time
Are there
limit
any
for-
more questions?
I really wish we could
And
hear
per
more
the
from
policy,
you.
Mr. Regal, we have the 2 minutes per person is including the answer, correct?
No, let me say that now.
I'm asking,
Well, we'll follow up.
Yeah, it's really not meant for this type of format where you're asking questions
However, it's
and
being
getting
superimposed
feedback.
on top of
Right.
this.
So, you know, it really would be up to the discretion of the board chair.
Okay.
And,
So you heard that?
count
You heard that,
the-
Priscilla?
It was 2 minutes.
Not attending this type of discussion,
Okay, got it.
format. Not attending this type of format, he said.
Okay, let's move on to the early.
Thank y'all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All your time.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
High school
Thank you.
update.
Have her email me. I can get her name and email because I'd love her to go to some parent neighborhood groups out there.
Sure. Okay.
Hello again.
Some of you look familiar. I've seen one or two
Okay.
before.
And this is another 10-minute.
Not for this format, he said.
I would say that if you were the United States Senate, it would include the response time.
We're going to dive in, if that's okay. You've seen the slide for Early College High School Next Steps. We are in the midst of working on budget requests for the coming year, and Early College falls under Learning Services for a big chunk of what they're doing. They're going to roll out year 3 next year. It's exciting that they won over $600,000 4-year grant. And Vanessa Denny, the principal, is going to just share some other highlights from Early College High School.
So we have a lot of highlights going on right now at Early College High School. I think our most recent point of pride is that before we left for Christmas break, our students earned 100% pass rate on their English 1 end of course exam.
That's very good.
It was awesome. We were really excited.
You said pass rate.
Pass rate, yes.
That means 70 or above, or C or above, or what do you mean?
D or above.
Oh, yeah, D or above now, yeah.
We just took Algebra 1 this morning, and I'm still waiting on 2 scores, but preliminary reports show that we're going to have about an 85% pass rate. We were already aware that algebra is our weak area. In general, AccuPlacer has told us that for the last 2 years, but we're really proud of our 85% pass rate. So we've got 20 students out of 62 who took dual credit classes this semester and who made the Trident Tech Dean's List. What we're even more proud of, though, is that we broke down the data to look at students who made A's, B's, C's, D's, and we did have a few F's. And among students who earned A's in dual credit classes, there is no achievement gap at all. So we're really proud of that. We've got a strong partnership with the City of Charleston. They help us with something that we call gap time. So that's the time that Trident Tech is not in session, but CCSD is. So we have kids who are scheduled in dual credit classes, but those dual credit classes aren't meeting. They do enrichment activities. They visited the Dock Street Theater for a behind-the-scenes tour. They visited the Charleston Museum for a behind-the-scenes tour. They talk about different career opportunities available, not just on the government side, but on what it takes to run the City of Charleston. And they also do some volunteer activities because we really do believe in something that we call the Early College High School Way, which is that we give back to our community because we're all the beneficiaries of this amazing opportunity at Early College. Other highlights, 83% of our freshmen demonstrated college readiness on AccuPlacer, which means that they'll place immediately into transferable college credit classes at Trident.
That was in the area of sentence skills, 97 in reading comprehension, and again, 75 in elementary algebra. So that continues to be our low point. What we're doing to address our low points that we're also really proud of is we have something that we call academic lab at Early College. And we've got a certified teacher staffed in our lab every period of the day. And there's a 24-hour turnaround for students who are recommended for intervention. It might be that they failed an assignment, failed a test, failed to turn in an assignment so that the teacher just doesn't have any data about how they were doing, or it could be anecdotal data that the teacher was walking around the class and noticed that there were some extra needs. So we schedule those students in academic lab during the second half of their AVID class so that they're not pulled out of a core content area class. AVID is proving to be also very successful for our students in terms of study skills and just having that support person. So those are the highlights.
Just to point out, the Palmer campus is undergoing ongoing renovations that have made space a challenge at times, but Learning Services is working with operations, and Jeff Rowe has some updates in that regard.
So just briefly, facility space for them in the following 2 years will be a big challenge, and it's something we're working with the academic side on. Ideally, we'll be able to stay on the Palmer campus. Realistically, we probably will need space elsewhere, whether it be this coming year or for the following year. So the two avenues that we're pursuing, one is rental space across the street in the cigar factory, first floor. It's right across the street from the college campus, where in fact students that got off the bus would be able to use the same bus stop. Instead of walking left, they'll walk right into classrooms. We'll also have to look at other district space as a possibility. So this will probably be, from a facility perspective, our number one challenge this year, and we're working it aggressively with this team.
Okay, thank you for the good information. So this data you're giving us, it reflects how many students?
189.
Okay, of the ones that you said you had 100% pass in the course in English 1, what are the numbers on those? How many made D's, how many made C's and B's and A's? Give me those numbers we have with.
So I have them really rough in my notes. We 3 A's total 20 B's, 35 C's, and 5 D's.
So that's,
sorry about that.
So 40, 60. That's only 63 kids though.
But they take it first. Then
63.
Yeah, I got 63 kids.
That makes sense. We had about a third of our freshman class enter already having English 1 as 8th graders.
Okay, so, all right, so when you, if I'm a student, I'm enrolling in dual credit, and I want to go to College of Charleston, for example, will my credits carry over to College of Charleston or Clemson or Carolina, or is it good only at Trident Tech?
So we have a policy, with the exception of one class, IDS, which is like a freshman seminar class. We only enroll students in courses that are on the state of South Carolina's articulation agreement, which means that any state university has got to accept those credits. And then we send most of our students in the direction of an Associate of Arts or an Associate of Science, and those are what they call transfer degrees. So they basically have no employability use, but transferring to four-year universities.
And if a student makes a D, say in a foreign language, for example, is the college going to accept that as acceptable credit, or
each college is different?
Well, local colleges, like College of Charleston, for example, are they going to accept a D or 62 as acceptable, or will the student have to retake that?
So I don't know. We haven't lived that part yet with our students in terms of transferring, but I know that each college has really different transfer rules.
Okay, so you enjoy your work. You enjoy your work.
I love my work.
You seem like you enjoy it.
I love my work. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, you're awesome. I have friends whose children are in your school, and they remind me on a daily basis that I better not change anything. So, just a couple of things, and I saved it for here because I thought it'd be better for a whole board to learn at the same time. I'm hearing that the gifted and talented, can you explain to us that thing we're gifted? Some parents are telling me that because someone once called their child gifted and talented, they're being excluded from the application process while they're still getting letters asking them to apply. So what's the confusion on
Vanessa,
that?
can I answer that?
I was going to ask if I could defer.
Yeah. So it's my understanding, this was what I was told last year, and if this is incorrect, please let me know. But it was my understanding that program, when it was established, with working with the board, that it was not for gifted students.
Right.
Okay.
And is that captured in our board action minutes? I want to make sure, because I remember that discussion as well.
I'm pretty sure it is, because we looked last year. The second part of that has to do, this is that centralization of processes. Miss Denny's outstanding, just outstanding. I've worked in other systems with early college high schools. She's outstanding. However, in some of the other systems in which I worked, staff inside the district office would help her with that process and give her a roster of students. We were talking earlier about the centralization of that, of the magnet choice and some of the application processes. That is an example. If we gave her that information, we think we can support her, and she would just send out to students. She would target who it went to. So it's not, I understand that there was some confusion because you made me aware last week. Yeah.
So really the question is, what is the gifted and talented moniker? And that's probably not something we answer today, but does it mean they have been in a gifted and talented class? Does it mean they've been state identified as gifted? They've been state identified, so they've taken a test.
It is an assessment, and it's has multiple parts. So it's not just one assessment, it's aptitude and achievement. You can get in just on aptitude.
And I love that, and that's remember, I'm not allowed to give you a lot of time to answer, so let's get to the point. The concern is that if someone has their child assessed for gifted and talented, there are very smart children in average schools all over Charleston County that are very smart and are not applying to our what we know are those schools everybody wants to get in for academics. Are we going to hit a wall where I understand you don't want gifted and talented kids, but at the same time, I don't say don't want, please let me keep talking, that we have that moniker that's creating some concern. Parents may choose to stop allowing their children to be assessed.
Well, it's a census test in grade 2, the way the state's got that identification process outlined. It's a
and
census
then if
testing in
parents
grade
who
2.
didn't realize 9 years ago we were going to start in early college and had their kid assessed, are you going back and reminding them they were state assessed?
Let me say this before I answer that. No, I'm not going back and because at some point in time those parents would have gotten a letter notifying them that their child was gifted. They would have gotten something in writing.
Okay.
However, this board makes a decision about who that program's for. Our job is to implement. Your job is to set policy.
Right.
It was my understanding that was the policy.
No, I just want to clear that. You have a preset budget that the board approved for 4 years for implementation. Last year, I know that you exceeded that request, and we were given some reasons why the original request. Will you be exceeding that request for your next year's budget?
We're working on that.
Yeah, that's a possibility. They are very thorough. Miss Randall, I told her last week she gets the award for being very thorough with her budget.
And I didn't realize that there would be construction conversation, but it seems to me this conversation, when we originally started it, that Palmer campus was not supposed to be the permanent home of this school, that we had in fact, and it was discussed on camera in public, that Trident at Rivers would be the ultimate location. Have we abandoned that because we're now talking about leasing some of the most expensive dirt in the history of Charleston, or?
That is not my understanding. I mean, I've not seen anything. Now, Mr. Barowie perhaps can speak to that, but I've not seen anything that indicates that it was slated for Rivers. Have you?
I've gone back and reread the agreement signed by both organizations, and Palmer campus. The Rivers campus is not mentioned in there, and it alludes to the fact that the Palmer campus would only accommodate 2 grades. So
right, when we were planning a school
Right,
for 4 grades, so obviously before that there had to be some conversation.
I just did not see it in writing. Again, I looked at the agreement, I didn't see the Rivers campus in there, in the agreement.
Point of order, if we can move on to the next item.
Thank you, Board, for the for center.
And I'll have to email you and ask you if you met your 1819 goals.
I did not see it. I am not.
So just,
Could you go like that?
Can I clarify?
I did.
I'm not.
Yep.
Don't worry about it.
The policy about the 2 minutes, that does say that during discussion, committee members shall have a maximum of 2 minutes each to address each agenda item, including but not limited to questions asked and answers received, for a total debate time of 20 minutes on any one item. At the end of 10 minutes, or when each member has had an opportunity to participate,
So then,
committee chairperson shall call.
Do you want to ask your question now?
I believe that Joseph revise those rules. Not good for, not for educating children.
So as we get started, Ms. Randall's also a part of this work. Sharon's been instrumental, and I'm going to let them describe some of the work they've been doing with the business community. But I first want to share that Joe and Michelle, Dr. Williams and Ms. Simmons, applied to this AASA, that's the National Superintendents Association. They applied for a cohort on a principal supervision program. And it was competitive across the nation, and they were selected last year. And I know we're going to have some other folks that apply in the future, and I'm sure they too will be selected. That's the quality of the staff we have at Charleston. But they want to talk to you a little bit about the program, and this is a wonderful opportunity for us to partner with the other districts in the Tri-County region.
So the Talent Development Initiative aligns with our strategic goal number 4 that speaks of implementing a pipeline that recruits, supports, develops top talent. And so CCSD, Sharon and I, Cindy as well, Dr. Postlewaite have been partnering with the local business community by name, Tri-County Cradle to Career, along with some of our higher ed leaders to develop a platform that develops aspiring principals, sitting principals, and principal supervisors. And so the work is out of the University of Washington, their Center for Educational Leadership. And Joe and I right now are participating in the principal supervisor piece, but this is just an avenue, we believe a vehicle that will help us train the upcoming talent, and so that we can sustain and retain the best leaders who come throughout the system. And so Joe's going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing right now with AASA.
All right, so great day, everyone. So the first thing we want you to realize about AASA is no matter what platform you enter under AASA, it always focuses on, like Michelle said, growing leaders. So, when you grow your leaders, you want to affect student outcomes. So that's the main thing that they focus on with AASA. And also they focus on that by using a continuous improvement model.
What was ASA? American Association of
Yes.
Yeah.
And so with that, they look at the continuous improvement model as well. So when you think about student outcomes, they say there are 2 things that affect student outcomes heavily. Of course, the first would be having a strong instructional leader, and the second would be, the quality of your teacher in your classrooms, or having strong quality teachers. They say that having a strong quality teacher has the most effect on student outcomes, but I think sometimes the 2 can kind of change. They can interchange, because in order to have a strong teacher, you need to have an instructional leader that's strong and knows content. So speaking about that leadership piece, when you're talking about the instructional leaders, they have goals with AASA, and the first is to help the principal or school leader identify that the most important or primary role for them should be instructional leadership. And there's a great diagram that they utilize where they have about 14 boxes. There are some white boxes with no verbiage on the inside, but there's one box that's blue and it has instructional leaders. So they have that box meshed into all of the white boxes, basically trying to state that, daily, weekly, monthly, even in a year, principals are responsible for a lot of things. But when you look down at the next diagram, it has that instructional leadership box spread out on top of all those white boxes that have no verbiage to say instructional leadership should be that principal's primary focus, but you also have those other things you need to worry about, but they should be supporting instructional leadership. So we have a pilot as a part of AASA where we focus, we learn about this process. with 2 principals. Michelle has identified hers and I have identified mine. And one of the things they told us was that we can utilize some of these things, piecemeal, but don't delve into the process with all the administrators because it's very time consuming. So we're using some of the things that we're learning with all of our school leaders, but we have a pilot principal that we're focusing on to fully understand and learn this whole concept about coaching individuals so that they can in turn go back and coach their teachers so we can affect our student outcomes. It's a very great process. We're working with people from across the nation. We're learning a lot, and it's something as simple as not thinking about. It may sound like it's really simple. Having an agenda every time you meet with a school leader because it keeps you on task. Because the first thing a principal wants to do when you walk in is tell you about all the facility issues, all the issues with the parents, all the issues with student behaviors. And so you give them some time, and what I call is the brain dump. So I give them about 15 minutes to do a brain dump, but then after that time is up, then we focus on those things. We identify a problem of practice. We constantly focus on that problem of practice and the things that we can do to affect student outcomes in that school. So it's a very great process that we're involved in.
And Ms. Randall and Ms. Simmons have been working with the committee on principal competencies, and they've gotten input from the principal leaders, but it's what are the skills and knowledge that you expect our principals to have. And they're going to be sharing that with the other districts across the region, the ones involved in this collaborative.
Well, are we talking about a train the trainer situation? Will we be doing in-house the stuff you showed us on our presentations here?
Is it okay if I take
Yes,
that?
please.
Thank you. So the 4 districts, the 2 districts in Dorchester, Berkeley, and Charleston are collaborating with the business community to set up this separate pipeline training model. And this is the first step. This summer, they will offer to train about 45 of our sitting principals to take them through this initiative so that our sitting principals, they can serve as in an advisory capacity. They're committing to raising $500,000 to create an institution that certifies principals.
So it would be external from CCSD, but would certify principals that, with a level of confidence that you guys have, that that's a great certification process.
Right. Trident Cradle to Career led a nationwide search for a leadership program. They interviewed, vetted several different programs. They selected this one. This will sit external from any existing education bureaucracies, and it will train people to lead the kinds of change that results in higher levels of achievement, particularly for those children who've historically been underserved.
I'm thinking this is an easy yes, but we've discussed sustainability of this. I mean, I'd hate to see this thing shut down in 2 years or fade out in 3.
That's why they're trying to raise $500,000.
That will create
to keep the seed
many
money, to
years.
keep it going, and then it will cost us probably somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 to put a principal through that training.
This is just a wonderful opportunity because we cannot afford to send all our principals to the University of Washington.
Exactly.
So this is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, and this is a national model that districts all across the United States are trying to implement.
Any other questions?
Sounds exciting.
Thank you.